Hi everyone, it's wonderful to be with you today. Welcome to this daily reflection from Salisbury Cathedral. It's so wonderful to have you with us. Today, Tuesday the 9th of March, I believe, but has been a rarity in our British life so far. The sun has been beaming out and shining. And it's been a really wonderful day, and I apologise if you're watching this on Wednesday because I think the rain is coming back. But it did get me thinking about a story that I wanted to tell you about. A story about a young me back in 2006. I was about 17, I think, roughly at that time, and I got the opportunity to go to Nepal. Which was a wonderful opportunity. But for those of you who know Nepal will realise that it's not the flattest country in the world. I think, in fact, there's 8 out of 10 of the tallest peaks in the world it held within the boundaries of Nepal, and I looked on the internet. It has over 240 peaks that are over 20,000 feet high, and so although this seemed like an amazing opportunity, I was somewhat filled with dread because I am not naturally athletic. Don't let this physique fool you. I am definitely not athletic, and I genuinely am not that fit, and I wasn't back then either. And so I asked, whereabouts in Nepal are you thinking of going? Is this somewhere that I should join with? And the answer that came back to me was the Annapurna region. I didn't really find that answer particularly reassuring, because again, a quick search of that area revealed that it has over 30 peaks of 19,500 feet high. So I sort of had this ringing around my head. Anyway, the conclusion I came to was that I was gonna take a risk. I was gonna put myself out there. I was gonna get scared and challenge myself. Because even though I'd have to train a lot, this was an opportunity not to be missed. Anyway, I ended up going there, and I will never forget coming into Nepal, looking out over a vista of mountains and terrain that was both challenging, awe-inspiring, and amazing at the same time. And then I stepped out into Nepal, and the world was a massive culture shock. Absolutely enormous culture shock of noise, smells, sounds. Everything was going 10 to the dozen. Anyway, we had a couple of days acclimatizing in Kathmandu before we set out on our trek, and from that point on, it was walking, and more walking, generally in an upwards direction. I remember crossing rickety old bridges with absolutely raging torrents of water coming down underneath, the noise just so intense surrounding as you walked over this thing that you could barely believe was holding you up. The paths went from paths to stones to loose rocks to boulders. Everything changed. It was constant changing. We walked through hail, we walked through wind, we walked through rain, we went above the snow line, and it just felt like we were walking upwards for days on end. And now remember, not much might have changed, but this is a 17-year-old me, and by this point, I am tired, I am grumpy, I am exhausted, my senses are in overdrive, and I was pushed beyond the limits of where I had ever been before. And as a reliable teenager, the fashion and order of the day was whinging. And there I was in this beautiful, amazing country, and all I could do was whinge, complain, grumble, as my emotions and body seemed to fall apart. And then we got to this tea house, and one evening we were there at this tea house, and we had a briefing from our guide, and they said, well, do you know what we've got to do? We've got to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I went, what? And he said to us, I remember, he said, don't worry about it. It's going to be one of the highlights of the trip. I want you to keep going. I'm going to keep it a surprise, but you're gonna have to go with it. And I thought, yeah, whatever, all right, mate, thanks very much. But anyway, I dutifully woke up at the time appointed, and I got up. And yes, you guessed it. What we did was we got out, we got walking in the dark, in the cold. We were above the snow line, so stuff was getting wet all the time. And we walked and walked and walked up, stumbling on unsteady ground through the dark. And then we got to this random clearing, and the guide said, "We got to stop here." Now, I was cold, wet, and fed up, and I couldn't see a thing. And I was completely grumpy. And I remember thinking, what are we here? Well, fantastic, brilliant, great, thanks for getting me up. And the guide turned and said to us, he said, "Yeah, right, we're here." He said, "Now the wait is on. The sun is coming." And we sat and we waited and we waited and we waited, getting colder, getting wetter. And then something amazing happened. I remember looking out, and this warm glow started rising, and the darkness started to be pierced by this intense radiant light. This warmth glowing, intensifying, these rays reaching out as the sun started to rise across this mountain range. And the view was exceptional. The noise level around me rose as people were going, "Look, look, look." And this mountain range now being exposed by the warm rays of the sun was just the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. It was like we were on the top of the world. It was just so awe-inspiring. I can really see sometimes when I think on that moment why God chose mountaintops to meet with his people often. You know, in that warm embrace of the sun, as the world around me transformed, all my grumbling, all my whining, all my pains, all my fears, they fell away. And in my mind, I went, "Oh my goodness. My eyes are open. The sun has come." Now, you might wonder why I'm told you that story for the last few minutes. Well, it's because I think there's a nature of the journey we've shared of the last year where actually we have been stumbling around in the darkness, where we've been struggling, where we've been feeling pain, suffering, difficulty, where actually we've been desperate for the sun to dawn, the sun to come. You see, in my story, it spoke to me about the inherent things of risk, of vulnerability, how sometimes in order to get us to where we feel we ought to be, we have to be open to the possibility of challenge, of risk, of making ourselves vulnerable. Because when we do that, we often find that in the upside down order of the world, that the sun dawns and we get a completely new and different perspective. You know, my story, as I keep thinking on it for years and years, is the hope and is a thing that is a metaphor that I cling on to for when we find ourselves in dark seasons. When we find ourselves in periods of pain and difficulty, of how we can keep ourselves clinging to the hope that the sun is coming, that the sun comes and it glows and illuminates and transforms everything around us. You see, as a Christian, I tell people about the sun who has already come. You know, Jesus, the brightest light of all, the hope of the world, the one to whom we can put our hope and our trust in, who reaches out to the least, the last, and the lost, who came and transformed the world, just like the sun did in my story. You see, the Son of God came. He brought transformation. He brought hope, not just to individuals, but to whole communities, countries, continents. So maybe today you feel like you're in the wilderness, in a darkness. I want to encourage you. The sun has come. There is hope. Transformation is possible. Darkness can be overcome by the power of the Son. So I invite you today, invite you to come and meet the Son, to come and meet with Jesus, because he is the true light of the world, who can change and transform and sustain us through the seasons of our life. Amen. God bless.